I was growing up, I wanted to do what Brent Musburger did on the CBS pregame show. He was the king, and he's still doing it. The Raiders play-by-play voice, lead broadcaster, and Brent joining us now. Good morning, Brent. How are you?
Good morning, Danny. Good to be talking to you, lad. Here we are, midway point, NFL. Raiders still alive in that wild card battle. Don't think they'll run down the Chiefs, but hey, you moved up in class. Mercedes-Benz a sponsor. That's big time. That's big time, my man.
How's this going over with Las Vegas? The Raiders get fined over $1 million and lost a draft pick.
Yeah. You know, the COVID restrictions are the COVID restrictions, and the league does what the league does. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I am not permitted inside the facility or out to practice, and I understand it. And I have stayed away with it. I felt some sympathy for my buddy John Gruden when he was fined earlier this year, Dan, $100,000, because the mask kept coming down in the night game against the New Orleans Saints here. I'm really not up to speed with all the details about the situation regarding Trent Brown. Obviously, he was not wearing the monitor around his wrist, and that led to exposure to some different players. And then he went shoe shopping with one of our safeties, allegedly shoe shopping. That's a main attraction here in Las Vegas, shoe shopping. But at any rate, we lost Abram for a game. So
just to let people know, Brenda's mentioning shoe shopping. That is women dancing, exotic dancing, adult entertainment, right, Brent?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, my man.
That's your shoe shopping. Okay. All right. I like what I'm seeing with the Raiders. I think they're a playoff team. And also, I was looking at the numbers with Derek Carr. Mm-hmm. His completion percentage, his quarterback rating and completion percentage has increased every season since 2017. He's up to 71% completion. His quarterback rating is 110. Those are impressive numbers. His interception percentage is the fifth lowest among qualifiers in NFL history. So what is it? What are the Raiders missing this year?
Defense.
Oh, okay.
They cannot. Last week they used the weather to their advantage, and they were able to shut down Baker Mayfield. But you and I know that when you have a fierce wind like they faced up in Cleveland, gusting upwards of 35 miles an hour, it was much easier to shut a quarterback down because accuracy was so difficult. Derek Carr and John Gruden have been on the same page now for some time. There was as there always is when a team loses and doesn't perform well, the media in particular jumps on the quarterback, and quarterbacks understand that around the league. But it was never Derek Carr's fault when they struggled. And John's system is difficult, especially when it comes to terminology, the number of plays he calls, very insistent. He has pushed Derek Carr to run more. I think he ran for a couple of first downs against Cleveland the week before. Quarterbacks in the NFL, when things break down and they see it, they can move the sticks for a first down. They have to take off. Those are the most successful quarterbacks. And Derek Carr has been doing that. He's on the same page with John, with the West Coast offense, and now with Henry Ruggs, and Ruggs gaining more and more experience, a speedster out of Alabama, they'll be able to get downfield a little more often. When you watched Aaron Rodgers last night, you watched the king of receivers outside the numbers. Now, traditionally, those are the most difficult throws for a quarterback in the NFL. When I say outside the numbers, if you're moving down and you get close to the sideline, we call that outside the numbers. Nobody is better than Devontae Adams, as he demonstrated again last night. And I would assume as time goes forward, as he works on route running, Ruggs will be very, very lethal outside the numbers because he'll beat the defensive backs by a step and a half. He's got elite speed. So things looking up offensively, but it is the defense. And we'll see what their young, impressive rookie of the Chargers, Justin Herbert, is able to do against the Raiders this week. I think this is a very tricky game for the Raiders. The Chargers have to be the Chargers have perfected the art of blowing big leads. They've got to be an angry football team this week.
I was also curious about this. Vegas had the Packers as a 6.5-point favorite last night. And I kept thinking, what am I missing here? Because San Francisco's decimated. Packers get their starting running back. There's no real home field advantage. And you got Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. And I kept thinking, there's something up here. And I thought it would be like a 10.5, 11.5 point spread there. So you get people to think, because if there was going to be a blowout, it was going to be Green Bay blowing out the Niners. And you might just take the money or the line there, the points, with San Francisco. So what was Vegas missing last night on this game?
No, Vegas wasn't missing anything. They knew what the Packer defense had done the previous week against Dalvin Cook. And they know what Kyle Shanahan likes to do is run the football. McKinnon was back. He missed last year with an injury. He's a solid running back. They expected the 49ers to come running. Mm-hmm. You have to be careful when you move a line up to 10 points because two things happen. Number one, those who just bet that opening number or where it rotates to will automatically take the 10.5. And then those of us who like to tease, i.e. me, we would immediately go up to 16 and include that in our teaser with the 49ers. So there's a couple of things that bookmakers have to look at. And there was money bet on San Francisco, even with that particular opening line, especially how much respect they have for Coach Shanahan.
What's the worst bet you ever made?
Last week, the New York Jets taking the points against the Kansas City Chiefs. I always remember my worst, most recent bet, if you know what I mean, Dad.
How about a great one?
Well, last night I teased the Packers down to 1, and I teased the over-under number up to 54.5 and went the under. That was a good bet because the regular over-under went down with that last touchdown when they put it up over the 50 mark. That was a huge money mover last night in the Packers-49ers game.
I lost a game, the Packers and the Bears, and Chester Markle, all he had to do was kick a field goal, and I cover, and he kicks it, it's blocked, he gets it, and he runs it in for a touchdown. That was my bad beat, Brent.
Listen, I remember that. I knew where you were headed as soon as you mentioned Chester Markle. Okay.
Were you betting when you were doing the pregame show?
No, I was actually being educated by Jimmy the Greek. I suppose occasionally I would come here when we weren't covering the Super Bowl, and I would come out and make a bet. But basically, I was a total innocent about point spread betting growing up as a kid in Montana. My education came later, and it was generally Jimmy the Greek. And many of us know that when the Greek made a move, go the other way. It was profitable.
It's amazing how far we've come, though, with betting, with all the sports, in particular the NFL. Where do you think we're going to be in 5 years when it comes to betting in the NFL?
Well, states are going to continue to be added to those who have it legalized. I think in this recent election, I think I saw that 3 more states legalized it, including Maryland. I know that Colorado is now up for speed. I think we'll continue to grow, but I warn everybody, and I do this all the time. If you think you're going to walk in and you're going to immediately make a lot of money, think otherwise, okay? Those numbers are very, very difficult to beat on a regular basis. Now, if you're a $50 bettor like I am, occasionally up to $100 for recreation, I think that's fine. I don't have a problem. Last night it actually enhanced. I'd had enough of the election coverage, and so I was able to watch a football game with a little added interest. But Danny, especially for youngsters, I keep stressing. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it's part of it. We're going to have it, but be careful. There are very, very few people who can make big money trying to beat those numbers week in and week out. So just don't think that you're going to, I can do that. No, you can't, okay? That's my alert. But it's going to be with us. It's part of the NFL. It helped the NFL become what it is today. People enjoy it, whether it's just picking winners or going against the spread or over-unders, and now all these propositions that are out there. Everybody can, but you don't want to get in over your head. Just please don't. I keep trying to stress that because I'm someone who really enjoys it, who thought it should be legalized, and now that we have it, especially youngsters have to pay attention. This is not, under any circumstance, an easy way to get rich. Let me just tell you that right now.
I'm also wondering, Brent, once we get back to whatever normal is where fans can go to the stands, could you see an actual betting parlor in stadiums that, you have to become a member to get in, you have to have cash to bet or debit cards, and that you could bet, almost like you have in the Premier League, but have a sports book at a stadium?
Oh, there's no question. Now, it's not day after tomorrow that this is going to come. But there's no question it is going to happen because when you look around the league, I believe it was the Indianapolis Colts who signed up a casino. First of all, they're the first team to align themselves with it, and that's the initial move. And then as time goes on, the league and the league really, if you look around, it's amazing how quickly the league has accepted it. I mean, there are sponsors and broadcasts. William Hill, I see them up all the time. They were going to be bought in the United States by Caesars, and Caesars is going to rebrand it. Caesars is a big story in Las Vegas here this morning. But absolutely, like the Premier League, down in Australia, they've got betting kiosks that you can go into down there to bet on Australian rules football as the game is unfolding. There's certain that is to come, but it's not day after tomorrow. I mean, it's going to take years, if not decades, before we get to that. But we're headed in that direction.
What's the first game you called?
First game I called would have been a Chicago Bear preseason game. I was the spotter. Lindsey Nelson, George Hallis really liked Lindsey Nelson because Lindsey did the review of the Notre Dame games on television early.
Paul
on
Horning.
Sunday morning, with Paul. And George Hallis was very fond of Lindsey. So Lindsey did Chicago Bear preseason games. I became Lindsey's spotter, and he was such a nice man. I was working locally in Chicago. And then Lindsey couldn't do it any longer, probably because of his New York Mets responsibilities. I don't quite remember the circumstance. And so George Connor, the old great linebacker, great defensive player, he was the analyst, and they asked me to do the play-by-play. And I really don't. We used to play, believe it or not, the Packers every preseason. So and they would play in Milwaukee, not Green Bay or Chicago, sort of a neutral site, the old county stadium. So that was probably my first play-by-play that I ever did.
Did you have any interaction with Lombardi?
A lot. As a newspaper man of the 60s, I was around Vince a lot. And when I first met him, I was scared to death of him. I was a tiptoe when I'd go in after a game. Normally, he was on the winning side. What I found with Lombardi, it was very strange. I'm not sure I've ever found this with a coach. After a win, he was more cantankerous than after a loss. Now, granted, he didn't lose many games, but he was the most gracious loser that I ever had to interview after a game. I remember in 1963, Paul Horning had been suspended for gambling by Commissioner Rozelle, and the Bears were able to win the conference and go on to win the NFL championship in Chicago against the New York Giants. And so we handled the Packers during that season, and I probably would not have if Horning had been playing, to tell you the truth. But at any rate, no one was ever nicer. And when you went to Green Bay on Friday night, he would have it was Saturday night. Actually, it was Saturday night. He would, especially the New York writers, he was very friendly with Red Smith and some of the others because he'd been a long time assistant coach with the Giants. But he always had a nice cocktail party over at his house, very modest house, and we would all get together and have a cold beer and talk. And he didn't talk about the game. And he always said, there's nothing I can do about it now. The game plan is in, and we'll go see what it is. I always remember my time with Vince Lombardi. I had enormous respect for him, covered the Super Bowl one, and he felt so much pressure for the NFL to win that game and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. He took the Chiefs up to Santa Barbara and basically locked them away from us. Hank Stram and the Chiefs went into Long Beach, and they were wide open every day. You go watch practice, go talk to Coach Stram. A completely different buildup. And Coach Lombardi later told me that he felt that the weight of the entire NFL was on his shoulders to win that game. And, of course, they did in dramatic fashion and storybook fashion with Max McGee having stayed out basically half the night, not thinking that he was going to play. And then because of an injury to the wide receivers, he became Bart Starr's receiving star. So, yeah, I was around Coach a lot, and I really enjoyed my experience with him.
Yeah, I could understand that, there's a little tiptoeing or trepidation when you're around some of these. It was that way for me with Tom Landry. It was that way for me with Don Shula, with Bob Knight for a little while, and then all of a sudden, like, you have to kind of work your way in where, I don't know if you prove yourself, but I just kept showing up. And if you keep asking questions, and I eventually became very good friends with Don Shula. Coach Landry, I did not know him that well. Chuck Noll was a guy who intimidated me as well. But you just kind of hang in there and hold on for dear life sometimes.
Exactly. I did that with Woody Hayes also. And actually, it was not until Woody was replaced as head coach of Ohio State, Ara Parsegan became one of my analysts, and Ara and Woody were dear friends and rivals, and we would go into Woody's office after he'd been let go. We would see him every time we went to Columbus, and he became, just a cuddly old grandfatherly type. But I'm going to tell you, when I was a newspaper man and I'd get sent in as a columnist to cover a big Ohio State game, and you were around Woody, you were really careful around him at the time. Bo Schembechler intimidated me a little bit, and like you say, you just keep going. You keep going, and finally, they actually become very good friends. Bo, I've worked games with him actually in the booth. So, but you just hang in, like you said, and that is the way to approach it. And it was different back in that day. I mean, it was very, very different. When I covered baseball in the NFL, I would actually run with some of the players after games, but we under no circumstance will we write about going out and having a beer after a game or anything like that. But it's entirely different now. The media is not as close to the players. And, of course, the athletes have to be so careful when they go out because everybody's got a cell phone, which makes everybody a reporter, and times have changed.
Notre Dame +5. Notre Dame getting 5.
Yeah, not enough. Not enough for me.
Okay.
I'll pass. I think that's a game that has to be at around the 7 or 8 level before I think about Clemson. There's 3 teams that you're looking at right now: Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. They appear to me to be headed for the playoffs, and then they can choose whoever they want to be the 4th team. But I think those 3 I mentioned, Dan, are probably at an elite level.
Great to talk to you as always. And thanks for sharing, and have fun this weekend.
Thanks, Dan.
Great.
Talk to you soon.
All
Bye.
right. That's Brent Musburger, Hall of Famer, radio play-by-play voice with the Raiders.